you have dated for 20 years. How old were you when you first dated?
I think I was around 15 or 16 years old when I first started dating.
Do you remember the guy?
Of course I do. You always remember the first one. I remember the first kiss with one guy, and then I remember my first relationship right after that.
Okay. Now, when you dated your first guy at 15, why did you date him? Do you have any idea? What caused you to sort of say, "Yep, that's the guy I want to date"?
I think when you're that age, you're not really thinking that critically about like, why do I want to date this guy? I think for me, it was as simple as like, I found him attractive, he found me attractive. And especially at that age when you're so young, you're dating for the first time, your brain is still developing. Anytime someone pays attention to you, gives you a compliment, they show interest in you, that's
Mhm.
so flattering and that feeds the ego. And so it was literally as simple as that. And it's like, okay, let's date, let's give this a try.
So what did dating mean? What was it like when you're 15 and dating a guy?
From my experience, I would say kind of pretty chaotic. I think when you're in high school, I don't know how it is now. Of course, I've been out for a very long time, but you basically decide to be exclusive or official. You're not seeing anyone else. And dating is not like it is as an adult, right? You're just getting your learner's permit, you're just learning how to drive a car. And so I think you're pretty confined to what dating is in that sense, but also depending on how your parents raised you and what their expectations are around dating, it's pretty regulated. So for example, like if we would hang out at my house, it was the doors always had to be open. You can be in the bedroom, the
Mhm.
doors are open, you're not going to close the doors. If you're in the basement watching a movie, the door is open. So you're always kind of being monitored as you're dating at that age. I was at least.
Mhm. Did you talk to your parents about dating and romance and relationships, or did you sort of navigate it on your own?
This is one of my regrets because we never really had those conversations. And I actually had a conversation with this about a friend the other day that because we didn't have these conversations with our parents or really for both of us, any adult figure in our life at the time, we had to figure out what dating meant to us basically through trial and error, like what is right, what is not right, because we never asked those questions.
Mhm. So how did you learn? From your friends, from the boyfriends?
Through experience and friends, and probably, unfortunately, TV shows and movies, which, as you know, Hollywood tends to glamorize romance at any age. I think, especially the teenage years, and that's one of my biggest regrets. Is I wish that we would have asked more questions, or I wish that my parents would have asked me more questions. Like, for example, what do you like in the guy? How does he make you feel good? Does he give you compliments? Does he show up for you when you need him? Like, what are the characteristics about this man that you really like? And so, basically, through trial and error for most of the
Mhm,
beginning of, my dating experiences, I had to learn, okay, I'm okay with this. No, this is not okay with me.
mhm. Now, if you would have gone to your parents and said, Mom and Dad, I have a question about what to do with this guy. I have a question about dating. How would they have responded?
I think they would have been pretty open to the conversation. I mean, my parents at least never kind of hid their opinions on the men I dated
Mhm,
from me. And,
mhm,
they did it in a way that I think was fairly respectful looking back. I think at the time, I just thought they were being harsh and unfair and like, why are you judging him? But they always had my best interests at heart, when I was dating. So.
So you moved on from boyfriend number one and then went to boyfriend number two or three, and you've been dating for 30 years. Sorry.
20.
So you've been dating for 20 years and you're unmarried.
Yep.
Um, what similarities did you find in the men that you dated over those 20 years, or are there similarities?
I have been reflecting on this a lot, especially recently, because I think, as a doctor, we tend to kind of repeat patterns in our life, right? And when I look at kind of, the core relationships, the first one, maybe the most, for lack of a better word, traumatic one, and then my most recent one, I think what I found in the patterns when I look at them, just them, not me, is that I date men that seem to need a lot of external validation, but from other women. So, when I'm sure you're familiar with the love languages, so one of the ways I receive love and one of the ways I give love is words of affirmation. So,
Mhm,
anytime I'm in a partnership, I always want to make my partner feel good. Like, you're so handsome. I'm really proud of you. Thank you for doing this for me. Things like that. And I think oftentimes it maybe wasn't enough for the men that I dated because there always seemed to be another distraction around, right?
mhm,
And I think when I was younger, first relationship, did not handle it very well. My brain was still developing, so it just came out as a
mhm.
lot of anger and jealousy. And then as I progressed and got more mature, it was really asking questions like, okay, um, why do you let this girl do this? Like, why is she always touching you? Why is she behaving this way? Why is she always texting you when we're together, right?
Mhm.
And I tried to peel the onion back with these guys and didn't really get very far. But in their defense, they never did anything wrong, really. But my expectation is when you date, you don't need, like, I don't need men giving me a lot of attention when I have a boyfriend, right? So when I'm dating
Mhm.
someone, I always found that these men, no matter how much I kind of put into the relationship, they always needed some attention from someone outside of the relationship.
So we know that you found men that seem to want a lot of encouragement from you, applause from you. What did they give you?
That's a really good question. Um, I would say in previous relationships, not a lot, if I'm being honest. I think the most recent one was probably where I received the most. And I always refer to the love languages because I think it's a really helpful tool. But I knew that he cared about me through acts of service. So he would
Mhm,
always be super helpful and go above and beyond. So I know you know this, but I recently moved a few months ago, and it was navigating the move in a new country, in a new place. So having someone show up for me when I'm trying to figure out bureaucracy, where to go to buy this, all of those basic things that I would normally be able to do on my own if I was back home, it was nice to have someone show up in that way for me because that was how I knew that he cared about me.
mhm. Was it enough?
For me, no. And I feel terrible saying that because at the end of the day,
Why?
because I think as women, and I'm sure you know this too, we're always kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? We're always taught maybe to kind of be quiet and not ask for a lot. And then when we do stand up for ourselves, it's too much. We're being too loud. We're taking up too much space. For me, I think what I realized was that the acts of service were great, and that's something that I want in a future partner. But I think I needed more romance. I need someone
Mhm,
to hold my hand. I need someone to put their arm around me. I like date nights. I love hanging out with large groups of people, so I don't want to say that that wasn't a fun time. But I think if you really want to build a partnership with someone and get to know them, there's certain conversations and moments that need to happen when it's just the two of you. And I think that was what I was lacking a little.
W what are those conversations?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think at my age, and this is probably something, you know, when I was younger, these conversations didn't make sense, right? I think as you get older, you start to really figure out what you want in your life, and you have to know if the guy you're dating or the person you're dating is interested in the same things, right? So it's conversations. For me, it's around politics, it's around religion, because if you decide to have kids, how you feel about certain subjects is definitely going to impact them. And then
Mhm,
it's also like, what kind of lifestyle do you want? Do you want to be in a big city? Do you want to be in a small town? What does your work look like? What does my work look like? How do our schedules, kind of fit together? And then as I've gotten older too, I realized that I want three simple things in life: fall in love, get married, travel the world. That's it. If I
mhm.
have that, I will be very happy. But I can't date someone who maybe doesn't believe in marriage, or maybe they're happy staying in one place for the rest of their lives, right? That would bring up incompatibility issues.
You've broken up with a number of men. Obviously you broke up with with boyfriend number 1 when you're 15.
I think it was mutually back and forth with that one in terms of the
Yeah.
breakup. Yeah.
What effect did, breaking up with guys have on you?
Oh, so I think in the past, for the most part, I would kind of let the relationship really go past the point that it should have and waited for the guy to break up with me. Because sometimes I question the decisions I make. I think I'm getting better at that. It's not perfect. I've gotten more comfortable having the tough conversations that will probably lead to the breakup, whether it's me ending the relationship or the guy ending the relationship. And something that I'm still working on that maybe will help some of your listeners as well is that when relationships end, I have a terrible tendency to overthink all these questions. Why wasn't I good enough? Why wasn't what I did enough? Why am I, like, all of those like really negative thoughts about myself, right? But at the end of the
Mhm,
day, I'm not going to be compatible with everyone, and every guy is not going to be compatible with me. So I think it's really taking a step back and saying, okay, what did I learn from this relationship? What did I learn from the breakup? Because breakups can be pretty traumatic. And how can I take this as a growth opportunity and move forward into my next relationship? So I'm still working on eliminating negative thoughts post breakup.
it's very interesting because as I listen and I hear you talk about, a breakup with one guy or another guy, to me, just listening, there's a common theme, and that is you felt you need to overgive, you felt guilty when you broke up. So it doesn't seem to me that when you were looking in a relationship, you were really thinking about what you wanted and needed early on. Is that fair?
I think that is really fair. I tend to get, even at this age, I tend to get pretty swept up in moments, and I try to live in the moment and be as present as possible. But with that being said, I think it's a fine line between, kind of getting swept up and starting to date someone. And then at what point do you recognize that your needs aren't getting met? And how do you bring that up? Because you want to stay in the honeymoon period as long as possible. And that's not always
Mhm.
realistic.
No. And you're never gonna think about your own needs and this person objectively if you're in the honeymoon period.
Absolutely not.
One of the reasons I really appreciate what you're saying is because I think that the feelings you have as an adult woman dating are a reflection of the feelings you might have had as a teenager, a young teenager dating, even though you didn't realize it because you didn't have a lot of brain maturity. What would you say now to your 16-year-old daughter when it comes to dating?
I mean, I would love if I ever have kids to just tell them don't date. I know that's not realistic. But I think Oh my God. Reflecting back on that time in my life, if I ever have kids, I would tell them just not to take it so seriously. Like to enjoy the experience, learn something from it, right? But at that age, and I certainly felt this way, your world is so small. And that high school world is so small and everything feels like it's kind of like you're in a boiler situation, right? If you have like the
Mhm.
bullies and the mean kids and you're in this relationship and then it ends and everyone knows about it. I think there's just so much pressure at that time when in reality, most people, I mean, there are stories, people marry their high school sweetheart and they live happily ever after, but that's not the norm. So I
No.
think I would tell my kids, learn as much as you can from these experiences, but I think I would also want to be in the role of asking them the questions that I wasn't asked, right? Like we talked about earlier. What
Mhm.
characteristics do you like about this guy or girl, whoever you're dating? How do they make you feel? What are you maybe not getting in this relationship that you wish you did? Oh, just asking those questions because I think that could have really informed me better. And then if you write them down, you can start
Mhm.
to make that list and figure things out as you go from relationship to relationship.
Yeah. So do you think if you would have had those conversations with your parents, hypothetically, and I don't blame your parents because no one taught us how to help our kids navigate this. Do you think that would have changed who you dated over the years?
I don't know if it would have changed who I dated. I think it probably maybe would have given me the tools to, I think from my end, right, communicate better because communication is something I've gotten better at as I've gotten older, gone through therapy, all the things. Um, and I think maybe if I had had those conversations when I was younger, if I got into relationships that really weren't serving me, that maybe I would have had kind of that process or those thoughts in place to maybe end that relationship sooner. Because, like, I never like to say that we're wasting time because everything in life is truly a learning experience. But maybe I could have saved a little bit of time realizing that this wasn't going to be my person and just moving on a little bit sooner for both of us.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that we fail to do as parents is to teach our kids that, this is just a season. And every 16 or 17, 18-year-old who's dating their first boyfriend or girlfriend, somewhere in their heart, they believe this could be that person. And it's hard to tell your kids that maybe it isn't, but it's important to be in there and to be in the conversation with your kids. So you're a mom, you have a 16, 15-year-old girl, she brings her boyfriend out to the house. Would you make her keep all the doors open?
Oh my God, yes. I'd probably be in the same room with a
Yeah,
bowl of
yeah.
popcorn. Just oh, absolutely,
"Hey, guys, how are you?"
absolutely.
I appreciate you hearing that because or I appreciate you saying that because a lot of parents, "Well, I have to honor their privacy, and I don't wanna be intrusive and stuff." But you have to because you have to protect your kids from themselves.
Exactly. And,
Yeah.
they did respect my privacy, but the doors were still open, right?
Mhm.
And what honestly really scares me, and I do not know how parents navigate this these days, but I think social media is just, I know you have opinions on this as well, but when I was in high school, social media was just coming around. And I didn't get Facebook until I was a freshman in college. And then Instagram, I
Mhm.
don't think existed for me at least until I had graduated college and I was in my first job, right, as an adult. So I can't even imagine what 15, 16-year-olds or even younger are being exposed to that I wasn't, right? So
Mhm.
I think that's probably more negatively impacting, maybe they're thinking around relationships and maybe thinking they're more mature to make decisions and do things than they probably are.
Oh, yeah. And listening to you, people can't people don't know you, but they can see you. You're gorgeous, you're smart,
Thank you.
you have all this experience, and yet even you in your relationships felt you were a failure and felt, "What should I have done? And what should I have done? What should I have not done?" And if you felt that way, now put yourself in a 16, 17-year-old body who's on social media comparing yourself to all the other girls this guy might wanna date. It would knock you down even further. So my sense is that a lot of girls who go to date don't feel good about themselves. They feel like a failure from the get-go. They feel like they need to impress this guy and make him happy with who they are, and that can be a recipe for disaster, and that's why I really wanted to interview you because I want parents to see you and hear from you that this is a real thing.
Oh yeah, and again, I can't even imagine it because I think it's something that gets a little bit easier. I think maybe a lot easier as you get older. And it's not to say that I don't have my moments either of the comparison trap or you kind of wondering who else a guy might be talking to. But I think what people in general, but especially girls, need to work on is that, it's building that self-confidence muscle. And I wish I could share tools for how I did it, but you know I think the one thing I will say is that my confidence has not grown because of validation from men or anyone, right? It's because I've
Mhm,
gotten more confident in myself. And that doesn't mean I don't have bad days. That doesn't mean I never compare myself. It doesn't mean, post breakup that I'm not wondering what more I could have done. But I think when you work on kind of building yourself up, then, you're not going to be like these other people, like the guys I told you that need the validation from other women.
mhm,
Because
mhm,
for me, I don't need validation from men to feel good about myself. Because I know
mhm,
what I have to offer. And as hard as it is when someone doesn't recognize what I have to offer, I know that the right person will appreciate what I have.
yep. And I think that that sentiment exists in young girls as well. And I think that we can raise daughters in their teen years and early 20s to feel very strong and to feel they don't need a boyfriend, um, to validate themselves or to feel good about themselves in life. And I really think that parents can do that with kids during their teen years. But I think that a lot of parents are afraid. We're afraid to say to kids, you know what? I don't think it's smart to date at 15 or 16. Let's push it forward because I feel that this is a time for you right now. This is a time I want you to develop your character, develop your skills, your grades. And I think a lot of times kids, particularly girls, will cut themselves off from other girlfriend relationships because of a guy. And then it really backfires because then you break up and you don't have your girlfriends with you. So if you would have felt more self-confident in your teen years, do you do you think how do you think dating would have changed for you?
Oh gosh. I think I would have ended that first relationship a lot sooner and never looked back. But I think I would have just been less distracted in general. Like, I still did really good in school. I was an overachiever to the point of probably like really unhealthy burnout at that time. But I think it really colored some of my younger experiences pretty negatively because I was
Mhm,
caught up in this drama that, literally once I graduated high school, it didn't matter. So I think that's one of my regrets. Like, I wish that I had more confidence in myself, but I think I was just in the mindset of just being the overachiever and having to make the perfect grades to get into the perfect college. And, I think that's another, for better or worse, negative thing about high school is because once you hit the adult world, I think maybe some of that comparison exists in a similar way, but I don't sit around with my friends. Like, we're not comparing, like, my company's better than your company, or like, if we talk about salaries, it's to help boost each other up. It's not to, you're up here and I'm down here, right? And high school
Mhm.
really kind of frames it that way. Like everyone's competing against everyone for relationships, grades, where you're going to school, athletes, everything.
Well, and dating just gives you one more arena to compete in.
Yeah.
I mean, the girl wants the cutest boyfriend, but her parents want her to have the cutest boyfriend, and that's not okay.
Oh my gosh. I can think of so many stories too that I remember when I was in high school of just like how other parents would talk to my parents about the guys that their daughters were interested in, and it was all about status. I don't remember ever hearing like he's just a really nice guy or he treats
Mhm,
her well. It was about the last name or the money or what they had to offer. And even adult women do that sometimes, right? Without the parents, but it's also that kind of almost societal kind of pressure system that we've created around dating.
so let's boil down Alexie's dating advice
Oh boy.
into 3 or 4 pieces, and this is what I'm gleaning from you. 1, don't date early. 2, if you're a parent, back out. Don't compare your kid's boyfriend or girlfriend with their friend's boyfriend or girlfriend. It puts a lot of pressure on your kid.
Mhm.
When your kids are dating, keep the doors open.
Yep.
What are some other boundaries that parents should put up for their kids?
I think it goes back to what we talked about like I wish that my parents or more adult figures had asked questions around my relationships. I think once you start doing that, you create a safe environment for your kid to talk to you about these things, right? Like when I was that age, I was not talking to my parents about sex or anything like that, right? But
Mhm,
maybe if we had started to have the conversations of what do you like about this guy, his characteristics, like how does he make you feel, like, just kind of peeling that onion back, then maybe it would have opened the door for me and maybe other kids to be more comfortable having the more serious conversations with their parents
mhm,
that inevitably it's going to happen. Things are going to happen whether or not you have those conversations, but I think you can really tee your kid up for success if you, and this is coming from me, I'm not a parent, but if you're more open minded, like ask the open questions, just get your kid to talk.
mhm.
Yeah.
I love it because it's sound advice I would give coming from the mouth of someone who's far younger than I. But you're absolutely right, because I think that when we really move into our kids' lives as an ally, we not only give them good counsel and set them up for success, I think that we can minimize a lot of pain for them.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. And I think, dating never gets easier. You just get more tools in the toolbox to date.
Mhm. Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Alexi, thank you so much for joining me today. You have taught us a lot, and I really appreciate your willingness to be so open and vulnerable and transparent. It will really help a lot of parents.
I hope so.
Many professionals invest in an executive coach for personal development and a trainer for physical fitness. Now, you can hire me, a best selling author and expert coach, to help you raise great kids. I've over 35 years practicing pediatrics and an extensive experience decoding what your kids need and think about you. I've helped countless parents just like you. You can talk directly with me through private or group coaching. I'll listen and provide a customized plan to help you be the best dad you can be. Sign up now through the link in the episode notes. Your kids are counting on you. Let's make your family's future brighter together.